So I want to make sure that I'm not asking a wrong question. I don't want you to give me your opinion about her answers. I'm just going to ask you to kind of summarize what she said
Sure.
over the course of these transcripts. So let's start out with affairs. Can you just summarize what she told you about the affairs over the course of the February and the October examination under oath?
She told me that she was never unfaithful to him, that he had accused her of affairs, but that she wasn't having any. There was some concerns about her work, that he had gone to work one time checking up on her. He accused her of having an affair with Kate Fox. And she denied all of those, but apparently she admitted that he had accused her of that.
And did she say if the horses were any sort of their marriage frustration?
She said that was a wedge issue. She had, I think it was 20-some horses at the time of the fire. At one time she had 49 horses, but they had no barn. So these horses were just out apparently in the field. 20 large animals, I'm sure.
And I'm going to not have you give any opinions. So I just want you to summarize for me, okay?
The wedge issue was both acquiring them and maintaining them was apparently the issue.
And I think we've already talked about the debt, so I'm going to skip over that. So can you summarize then over the course of those two transcripts what she had told you about divorce?
I think we read yesterday some things about Attorney Gaggy, that he had given her paperwork in November. She mentioned that I believe it was a relative of hers wanted her to just slip out, and she said she couldn't leave him without talking to him first. She had talked to Corey apparently a week before the fire about her plan to divorce and leave. She told the story about Todd being sick of everything and wanting to leave that I mentioned earlier. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring at the time of the fire, although she did explain that she works with caulk at work, and so she wouldn't wear it to work, and sometimes she'd forget to put it back on. And when we got into some of the details of the events around the fire, I wanted to clarify whether she intended to leave, and she told me that she knew all along that she was going to leave on that day the fire occurred. But then at the same time, she told me that she never really wanted to get a divorce from him. She was hoping that leaving might prompt him into counseling or something like that. But she had given him the paperwork from Mr. Gaggy apparently the night before the fire as part of that fight they had the evening before the fire.
And we already talked about that she had said comments about the Ambien and the marijuana, so I'll skip over those topics.
Sure.
And you talked a little bit about the domestic violence that we were reading yesterday. Were there more instances or questions than pertaining to domestic violence in the marriage?
Well, yeah, I mean, she told a very dramatic story at one point about the night before the fire, him trying to force himself upon her sexually, forcing her legs apart, trying to take off her pants. She threatened to call the police, and that is the only reason why he stopped. But then I'd hear a story about, she gets up the next morning and makes breakfast for him. So again, I had to probe into that area more. Then suddenly it became less rapey and more he just desired to have sex. And then it went back to, no, he was forceful with me. So there was a shifting take on things as I would probe into details. When one thing wouldn't match up with another, I'd ask about it, and then we'd get a slight change.
And did she talk to you about how many times there was any incidents of any physicalness between her and Todd in terms of violence?
She said it was off and on throughout the years, and she was kind of vague about it. That's why I asked her specifically, well, what about police incidences? And she told me about one in 1996, and she told me about Thanksgiving, were the times that police were called, but she was careful to say that she didn't call the police, apparently on either of those occasions. But there was no record of domestic violence, no charges against either of them that I was able to find.
And she told you that?
And she did say that as well, yes.
And any other altercations that she talked about, or the number of incidents that she would have had in her 13-year marriage?
I mean, I think at one point I asked her if it was 20 or 25, and she said that seemed like a high number to her, so it was less than that. But as I dug into details, I guess I didn't follow up on a specific number, and she didn't. I don't think she had one either.
Okay. And we talked about her frustration with Todd's job. Anything additional on that?
I think we read yesterday about that he didn't work smart, and he didn't work hard enough, he didn't work often enough, he didn't make enough money, was basically the gist of it. Mm-hmm.
So now I want to get into the details of the night before.
Sure.
So did she tell you where the boys were the night before?
Well, yeah. What I was interested in, and typically this is my normal MO in these examinations under oath, is, whenever you got home before the fire, everything that you did, everything that happened until the fire.
He's not being responsive to the question that was asked.
If you could rephrase the question to make
I'm
it
sorry.
so that he can be responsive to it.
Sure.
What's your approach when you're talking about the night before?
I want to know every detail of everything that happened. I want to know everybody who was there. I want to know, because anything could end up causing a fire. So, if you brushed your teeth, do you have an electric toothbrush? If you made breakfast, did you use the stove, right? All of those details, who was home, who left, when did they leave? I get into all those details starting from the night before, or whenever you got home before the fire, to whenever you left. And so with this case, it was the night before. She said she got home around 10 or 10:30. I believe she was at her grandmother's maybe 90th birthday party. And when she got home, she said that Todd and the boys were home. The boys were in the basement, but when she first got home, she didn't go down there. She talked to Todd at the beginning.
And what did she say that conversation with Todd was?
It turned into a fight about the debit card, use of the debit card, spending money, not recording things in the ledger.
Your Honor, I want to again object to the characterization that's being made in reference to this witness. He's stating that there was a fight, and there's absolutely nothing in the transcript that states that there was a fight.
Ms. Ideving, can you get me to point where?
I have the exact page numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. So in one of the transcripts, I'm going to have you pull up page 85.
Sure.
Which transcript?
I think they're all labeled 1 to 200 and something. So page 85.
It's in 35. It's in 35.
So did you ask her to describe that conversation on Saturday night on page 85 and 86?
She said that the
Can you stop and
conversation.
tell me what line it is so I can have then Jay bring it up for us?
Right. I'm just looking to try and find the right spot. Back on page 84 at the bottom, she said, line 24 and 25, he screamed a couple of times, but it was argumentative, but quieter. It wasn't calm. Again, she repeated on page 85, no, it wasn't calm, but it wasn't terrible. That conversation lasted about a half an hour. I asked her, so that took us to about 11 o'clock, and she agreed.
So you interpreted that as that they had fought?
Yes.
Again, can we approach
It may.
So you described, I think you just read in, that he screamed a couple times, but it was rather argumentative but quieter, correct?
Correct. She had showed him the divorce paperwork. He told her that she should, quote, pack her shit and leave. At some point, I originally thought it was in the conversation the night before, and then later I think she said that it was Sunday morning, but he said he said she could have the blazer. She told him Saturday night that the boys would stay with him and that she'd be going to Kim's house. And
I want to talk a little bit about when she was talking about when she went to bed then after this argument.
Right. Initially, that's when she told me that that's when this rape accusation happened, about forcing himself upon her. And then she told him that if he continued, she'd call the police. And he kept yelling at her that if she'd just have sex with him, everything would be fine. Eventually, then she told me that she went downstairs to the basement where the boys were watching TV and told me that she laid on the couch with Trenton and fell asleep and spent the night down in the basement. I said, well, wait a minute, I thought that you were in the bedroom and Todd was forcing himself on her. And then she said that after I confronted her with that, she said that, well, what happened was she went downstairs, she fell asleep cuddling with the boys, and then she went back upstairs to brush her teeth, and then that's when that happened, and then she went back downstairs to go to sleep.
And so then she said she slept in the basement?
Correct. And then she told a story about Todd fussing with the furnace in the middle of the night, which I guess was also in the basement.
And she said she heard that when she was sleeping in the basement?
Yes.
And did she say what he was doing in the furnace?
Apparently on Sunday he told her that he had to bleed the line because it was blowing cold air, is what she told me.
And did she tell you what she did the day before the fire, on January 6th, before the boys left?
On the day of the fire?
Yes.
Yeah, so she apparently was the first one up. She wanted to go, she wanted to make breakfast for everyone. So she went to the convenience store at the Marathon gas station, bought, I believe it was sausage and eggs, and she said topped off the fuel tank in her Blazer. I asked her a couple of times, a couple of different ways, if at any point she put gasoline into a gas can. She told me she absolutely did not. She was absolutely sure that she did not put gas in a gas can. She only topped off the tank of the thing, of the Blazer. But then I was struck by the fact that she said that her total purchase was...
I'm gonna have you take your...
Yes.
Sir,
What
if
he
you
was
could
struck
answer the questions without giving your own opinion.
All right. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Yes. She also told me that buying all of those things, including topping off the tank on the Blazer, came to about $20. So it must not have been... so that's what she told me.
Okay. And then when she got back, you had, I think, alluded to a conversation between her and Todd about using the debit card. Was that also about the debit card use that morning?
Yes. In fact, she said to her, you knew I didn't have any money to get this stuff. I was going to have to use the debit card, although after the fire, I believe...
I'm going to have you stop you there. In terms of just her statements, if you could just talk about her statements.
She said that she didn't have any money to use it other than the debit card. She said that she spent a total of $50, $60 that weekend. And that particular fight, when she got home from the gas station, lasted about 10 minutes. Okay. She again described it as him screaming at her while he was sitting at the bar, and apparently then he told her again to just pack her stuff and leave.
Okay. And then did she say what she did after this discussion?
She then decided to go down and wake up the boys and send them out of the house. She gave them money to go to the movies or go shopping, she said. because she thought that she and Todd would be arguing and she didn't want the boys to hear it, and she was going to pack. She explained to the boys that that was the day that she'd be leaving, and they did not seem terribly upset by that, she told me. She also told the boys that they'd be staying with their dad to finish the school year.
And then did she tell you how the boys left?
Yeah, she said that she didn't want to ask Todd permission for them to leave, so they should go out the basement door, is what she told me. I guess it was a walkout house, and they should go out the basement door and leave without saying anything to their father. Later on, she said that she went out the basement door with them because she had to, I believe, do something with the water trough for the horses. And so she went out with them, told them to wait while she got her purse out of the car and put it in the van, and sent them away in the Blazer because they didn't like the boys driving the van, which meant that she would have to, she said, use the van to leave Todd. And she told the boys, and she told me a couple of times that she told the boys to make sure you call before you come home, because I want to know where you are and where I am, and I may have to come trade cars with you or whatever. But the plan was that the boys would have the car and she would have the van, and Todd would be home with no vehicle.
And did she tell you then approximately what time the boys left?
They left between 11 and 11:30, I believe.
And then did she tell you what she did after the boys left?
Yeah, that's when she apparently went back upstairs and gave Todd breakfast. She said she made plenty of food for the boys to eat, but because Todd was yelling at her, she just gave them money for them to eat somewhere else. So she ate in the kitchen, Todd ate in the recliner. She mentioned doing laundry. She mentioned putting Christmas ornaments away because...
So I'm going to stop you there. So she makes breakfast and then she says she starts doing these tasks?
Correct.
Okay, and then go on. What task was she doing after breakfast?
She did laundry. She put Christmas decorations away. She said that she did the dishes and, like, with the dishwasher loaded, unloaded the dishwasher. She said she began to pack a suitcase down in the basement, and then she went upstairs to get some things out of her bedroom. When she was up in her bedroom, she saw a pamphlet for an acne medicine that one of her sons was on. And so she lay down on the bed and started reading the acne pamphlet, and then apparently she fell asleep.
Did she say what happened or how she woke up?
She said that when she got up and came out of the room, Todd asked her for juice. Apparently just said, "Do we have juice?" And then she went and got it for him. And then she went back downstairs. And then immediately described when she went downstairs that he was screaming at her, walking around upstairs, flushing the toilet, ranting and raving.
And that's why she's downstairs and he's upstairs?
That's what she told me.
Okay. And then did she say what he was screaming?
Things like, no one will ever have you, calling her unpleasant names, just basically ranting and raving about their relationship.
And that's when she was downstairs doing laundry?
Correct.
And did she say when he was doing this, telling her these things, what she did down in the laundry room?
At one point she said she slammed the laundry door in anger, but I don't recall any sort of other retaliation that she did. She said that in her experience she found that it was best to just let Todd vent his feelings.
And then, so she's downstairs doing the laundry. Did she tell you then what happened?
She said at some point the ranting, screaming turned into screaming when she was folding laundry. And once she heard him scream in a different way, she ran upstairs to see what had happened. When she got upstairs, she saw fire from the half wall between the dining room and the living room to where Todd was standing. I don't know if you have that Exhibit 3 from the EUO.
Did you actually have her mark then?
That's when we started having her draw things out for us, yes.
Somebody had.
So she, what we did, I believe I traced the outline of the house because she said that the walls were different than the plans. So we just traced the outline of the house and then she drew the interior stuff. She told me that she came to the top of the stairs, which you can see I had her indicate top at the top of the stairs. And that the fire was from the half wall. You can see half wall next to the dining room. To where Todd was standing, which is the small circle over toward the master bedroom.
I'm going to stop you there real quick.
Sure.
So when you say the small circle by the bedroom, let's see if I can get it right there.
Yep.
That little circle, is that the one that she marked where Todd was?
She said that's where Todd was standing, and then the X over by the half wall, that's where Todd's chair was.
Okay.
She said there was fire on both sides of Todd, that she saw his upper body was actually in flames, and the fire went from him all the way to the chair, and that the chair and the half wall were on fire. But she said there was no fire towards the bedrooms.
Which would be then this side over here.
Correct. And she said that the fire that she saw going from the half wall to that circle did not go to where the fireplace was.
Okay. And did she say, once she marked this up and she's describing what she sees, did she tell you what she did?
She ran. She said she ran. She felt like she had to get out of there. And then as she was running out of there, she thought, oh, I should call for help. So she ran toward the kitchen from the top of the stairs. She ran towards the kitchen and out the front door of the house, where apparently the van was, and the van had the keys in the ignition. And she decided that she would drive to the neighbors to call for help because her phones were inside the house.
So can you explain, did she talk to you then about what she did when she came out of the house?
Yeah, and this is where things got a bit confusing.
Again, all he needs to do is just read her answer from the transcript.
I can just say, I'm just trying to summarize it.
Sure, I'll phrase it a different way.
Okay. What?
Can you read from the transcript? Is
Well,
that in the
I can refer to the page, Your Honor, with his
Okay.
answer, and we can pull the page up.
Okay.
I think that would be easier, because I think when Attorney Willison was saying, there's multiple sections in the transcript that address this issue. So it's a summary, and then there's going to be different places we can go in different transcripts.
She'll
Your Honor,
provide.
that's why I asked, he needs to just read. She need to ask it the question from the transcript and the answer that was given. That would be simple.
I'll allow her to proceed in whatever manner she chooses, just like you will be allowed to
Thank you.
proceed in your cross as you see fit.
So I want to start out then with maybe the first conversation you had with her. If you can summarize what she said when she went out of the house.
She said, as she came out of the house, she heard a thud behind her and looked back, and the door was shut. She did not see Todd come out of the house. She got into the van, was going to turn around, so she backed up straight, she said. And I think this is where we started to have her draw what was marked as Exhibit 4 to the examination under oath.
Okay, so I'm going to have you then go to, is this the drawing that you're referring
Yep.
to as your Exhibit 4?
Yes, if we
Okay.
could maybe
We'll
zoom
keep
in more.
this up. And so she said she backed up straight, and then what happened?
So she backed straight up. She didn't back up very far, and that's when she saw Todd in the yard.
And then
she
did she-
marked the position where she saw Todd in the yard with an X.
And so there's an X marked on this floor plan. Oh.
So right next to the house, if you
Right
zoom
there?
in, right next to the house, she wrote van in the driveway there.
Okay, right
And-
where I've got it zeroed in.
And she said she backed straight up the driveway and then saw him standing where the X was.
Okay. All right, and if you could continue. So she saw
She
him.
said he was on fire. She was in the van facing the front door of the house, and then she drew a van with the number 2 in it.
Okay, so we'll pull that up. Oh. Number 2.
Yep.
Okay, what is the number 2?
And that's where the van was when she saw him. So she pulled up and stopped the van in the position where she marks number 3.
And there's 2 number 3s there, and one has a line through it. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, she decided that she had driven off the path, apparently wanted to change the location, so she changed
So
it.
she corrected it. So
Yep.
she crossed off one and she corrected it then with the new place.
She said she drove up there really fast, and she jumped out and screamed at him to just lay down. Apparently Todd was screaming and trying to pull his clothes off. He was jumping and moving and wouldn't lie down no matter what she said. Then Linda told me that she tried to get close to him, but she didn't want to get too close because she didn't want to get burned. She was afraid to touch him. And then she jumped back in the van.
What did she do then once she jumped back in?
When she jumped back in the van, she couldn't get it to go backwards, so she slammed it into gear and went forward to position 4.
Okay, I'm going to mark position 4, which is here.
Yes.
And what is that dotted line then by number 4?
She said there was a fence line there, and she almost ran through the fence. And then she still couldn't back up, so she decided to go down and behind the house, so further downhill, to try and get traction. And 6 is where she ended up stopping, is what she
So
said.
you said number 6. So
And that
back
is now
here.
behind the house, correct.
Okay.
Obviously, I asked her more questions about why is she heading further away, and she told me that even though it was further downhill, that they would sometimes go down there because it was sandier down behind the house, and you could get better traction, so she figured she'd go down there and drive up. But
What do you mean drive up?
drive back up to go out the driveway to apparently go get help. But then she said that she left the van there and she got out of it. She never described to me that she then actually drove back up the hill from being back there. When she got to where position 6 is,
Which is again where?
behind the house.
Behind the house?
Yep.
Okay. When she gets to position 6, what does she say she does?
She said that she saw Todd. He was not on fire. He didn't have any clothes on at that point. He was badly burned, and she actually used the phrase that he was like pink melt.
Pink melt?
Pink melt.
Did she say she approached Todd?
She did. She also said that when he was in the state, that she laid on top of him at that point. Because I guess the neighbors, Connie and Mike, had seen the smoke and were coming up the driveway. She laid on top of him because he didn't have any clothes on. And then she also said she didn't want him to not be able to breathe. And then she also explained it was because she didn't want him to go into shock or to freeze. She said she could feel his heart beating. She could tell that he was breathing, but it was hard for him. She said she put her mouth on his mouth a few times and just tried to give him little breaths. And she could see in that position that Todd's skin was melted.
And then did you ask her at any time if she remembered hitting Todd or how Todd got run over by the van?
Yes, she said she has no memory of that. She said that she had heard about that accusation prior to me talking to her.